I get a lot of my topic ideas for the Grammar Girl podcast from listeners. This week in the special video segment, we're going to look at how to write equations. And if you want the whole podcast, it's also here on YouTube and at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Here's a question from a listener.
Hi, Grammar Girl. I'm a physics postdoc, and I have been wondering this question for like years. So we have this long equations that spans more than a line, and it's really hard to organize such equations. Is there a manual that tells us how these equations can be organized? And also another quick question is, if I need to write, for example, by default n equals 1, should I write by default n and the word equals 1, or should I write by default n using the equal sign equals 1? Thank you. Keep up the good work. Bye-bye.
So I was catching up on listening to voicemails while I was having breakfast with my husband. And when I heard this message, I jumped up and ran to my office and he started laughing. But I knew I had a reference book that would answer this question and I just couldn't wait to get to it. I've gathered probably 200 books on English over the years, and most of them just sit there like an abandoned toy waiting to be used. And this week it was Scientific Style and Format's turn. This is a style guide put out by the Council of Science Editors, and it's probably been 10 years since I've needed it. And now the pages of this happy little book get to breathe again and tell us about equations. It says you should try to break the equation after an operator because that helps the reader realize that something more is coming. In other words, break it after an equal sign, plus or minus sign, or a multiplication or division symbol, in that preferred order, actually. It also says not to do a line break in the middle of a fence, which means don't break up a set of numbers that need to be considered together, like numbers together inside parentheses or brackets. Interestingly, the book also recommends trying as much as possible to keep equations limited to a single vertical line of text to keep the spacing looking standard. For example, it says if you're showing that A is divided by B, it's better to write A/B than to write them stacked as A over B. As for whether to use the equal symbol or the word equals, I'd use the symbol. It's what I'm used to seeing from my days as a technical writer. It's also what you see in journal articles about drug studies, for example. I couldn't find an entry on that specific question in Scientific Style and Format, but it's how it's written a couple of times in the text in the book. Finally, I have 2 caveats. First, it says that when an equation spans more than one line, knowing where to put the line break requires, quote, knowledge of mathematics, unquote, which I interpret to mean if our rules don't make sense in your case, don't follow them. And second, I think it's important to point out that if you're trying to publish a research paper, you should always check what the style is of your target publication because lots of journals have their own rules, or at least they might say which style guide they want you to follow. So don't assume they'll all use the general style I just told you. I actually double-checked what I told you here too against the much more detailed online style guide from the American Mathematical Society, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and it generally concurred. Amazingly, when I tried to search for something about the equal sign, I found that the word equals doesn't appear once in the entire 160-page document. It does say, though, that you shouldn't use the mathematical symbols for there exists and for all in text. Those are just for equations. Thanks so much for the question. My Scientific Style and Format book and I thank you. And if you like the video, check out the full podcast for more. The other segment this week is about how to pronounce the word Caribbean, or is that Caribbean? Thanks to our team at Quick and Dirty Tips for help with the podcast and video. And thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.